Hello and welcome to the Monroe Method Clancast. I am Jason Monroe. This is episode 143. I recorded this episode yesterday and it ended up a 38-minute ramble. Or that's what it felt like. I got very distracted. I went on lots of tangents. I kept losing my place. And when I get to the end of these, like when I'm kind of rounding it off, I'm like, have I actually delivered value in this or not? Not all, I record a lot of these, not all of them make it to your ears. And I don't like re-recording the same topic twice. I prefer it when it's off the cuff. It's the same with my check-ins. When I record Instagram Reels at my desk, I use the same microphone I use to do check-ins because it's a very good microphone. So I unplug it from my PC and I plug it into the USB-C port at the bottom of my phone. The problem is, I usually record my reels at the end of the day once I've done all my check-ins. And sometimes I'll wake up in the morning, walk the dogs, come home, sit at my desk, and I will start recording check-ins while the fucking cable's lying on the floor. If there is one thing in this world I detest, it is when I have done even one check-in and it's in pure silence. The microphone wasn't plugged in. Now, the reason I detest it is it's not because I don't mind doing it again or that the person still needs to get their check-in. It's the fact that I like doing check-ins off the cuff. It's a one-shot thing. I read it, I talk about the things that pop into my head. I feel like that delivers the best value to the person because in the past I've tried reading check-ins and taking notes, and then it just feels like you're running through a checklist and it doesn't feel very personal. And if I record something and find out that it used to be that my mic was muted, I got this new mic that had a touch sensor thing on it, and sometimes when I was moving the mic I would touch the thing and mute it, but I did learn how to switch that function off. So I hate going back and doing it again because it feels so disingenuous. Even though the person's hearing it for the first time, I don't feel like I can do it properly for a second time. So what I'll do then is I'll go and do 3 or 4 other check-ins, then I'll come back and do it again. Then it feels better. Anyway, you're not getting yesterday's episode. You're getting today's episode and a new topic. I want to talk about a client because she is a rare 1 in 1,000 client called Megan. Megan came to work with me in May. So I'm recording this quite far in advance. Today is the Monday. It's still not my birthday yet. So 28, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3. Today is Wednesday the 23rd of July. I just did a check-in yesterday. She's been with me since the middle of May. Whatever it is. She's on her second check-in anyway. It must have been June. It's June, middle of June. So she's on her third check-in, second check-in. She's done her 1 week where she'd been following her figures for a week, and she's just done 2 weeks. Now, Megan has lost 10.5 pounds. Now, it was one of those ones where at her first check-in in the first week, she was down 5 pounds, and you go, okay, 5 pounds is reasonable because that's mostly food weight, water weight, digestive weight, etc. Then, once we get beyond that first week, this applies to any diet. The first 3 to 5 days of a diet, you're not losing any body fat. Most people aren't. Because what most people do is eat to excess before they start a diet. So you've got it in your head that you're going to start the diet Monday and you say, I am going to eat this, this and this Friday, Saturday, Sunday, because I'm about to go into diet mode, blah, blah, blah. And you pack in thousands of calories over a weekend because you had a Chinese and then a McDonald's and then you ate lots of chocolate and you used up that packet of biscuits to get it out of the house. You know the drill. Now, the problem with that is it means that when you start your diet on Monday, you don't start losing weight on Monday because you're sitting there with made up numbers, but you're sitting there with 3,000 extra calories in your body that you didn't need. So let's say you're burning 2,000 calories a day. Friday, Saturday, Sunday, you ate 3,000 calories a day. You get to Monday and the 1,000 extra from every day is now sitting there twiddling its thumbs. So on Monday, you get into a calorie deficit and you eat 500 calories less than you need, but you don't lose any weight because that 500 that you didn't eat has been taken from the 3,000. So yes, you're in a calorie deficit, but you're using up all the calories you ate over the weekend. That's now come down to 2,500. You do the same thing Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. You're still not losing any weight. So Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, you've used up 2,500 calories. You've still got 500 left from the weekend before. And you'll use that on Saturday. And then Sunday, a week after you've gotten started, 7 days in, day 7, now, for the first time that week, you're starting to use your body fat. So the thing is, when you stepped on the scales on Monday, you had all that extra fake, false, artificial extra weight that you created. And throughout that first week, you used up all that fake, false, artificial weight. This is why people go to Slimming World, Weight Watchers, any diet, and they'll weigh themselves on day 1 at their heaviest possible weight with lots of extra weight added on top because they did lots of overeating before they got started. And by the end of the week, they think they've lost 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 pounds. And they've not. All they did was give themselves a mountain to climb. For the first week, they've made no progress. Now they're ready to get started in the second week. So this is why I have this conversation with people every day. You know, like we get to day 7, they've been following their figures for a week. Their weight's down 4, 5, 6 pounds. And I say, brilliant. That tells us that your calories are in the right place because your weight's coming down. But just keep in mind, most of that is food weight, water weight, digestive weight, excess calories, etc. I said water. Now that your weight has come down to here and we've got all that out of the way, now we're going to launch into your first fortnightly check-in. And in 2 weeks' time, we are going to find out what your rate of fat loss is because we're not dealing with all those extra calories or the water weight or the food weight. Your body has now adjusted to a new lower weight. Now we can start measuring fat loss. And so, back to Megan. So in Megan's first 1 week check-in, she was down 5 pounds. At her check-in yesterday, 2 weeks later, she was down 5.5 pounds. Now that is 5.5 pounds of body fat. Now that's 2 3/4 pounds a week. Sounds ridiculous. Well, it sounds ridiculous to me. Depending who you are and where you've come from and what your experience is, you've maybe seen people losing more than that at Slimming World, but you tend to forget that the people losing that at Slimming World usually had a gain of 5 pounds a week before. Oh my God, they've lost 6 pounds in a week. Yeah, but they gained 5 pounds last week, so all they've done is lose all that extra weight they put on. They've lost a pound. But anyway, that is a ridiculous rate of progress. That is way, way, way above the norm. But it's correct, and I'll tell you why. So Megan came to work with me, and she was 19 stone. And when I was finding out more about her, she spoke a lot about emotional eating, using food to cope as a crutch, all the usual stuff. Now, the reason that she's a 1 in 1,000 client is because that's how often people like this come along. Now, it's a bit early yet to say, but here's what I feel like, and even if it's not applicable to Megan, which I think it will be, I'm pretty sure it is going to be, I've had a dozen or so clients in the past that have been in the same situation. So the situation is that they join, they get started, and they lose weight at a ridiculous speed. Like, most people are going to lose anything from 3/4 pound to about 1.25 pounds a week, right? Most people. because most people only have the calorie capacity to lose that much, right? Most women I work with, well, most people I work with are women. I do work with men. It's just very low ratio of men to women. Most women I work with are burning between 1,800 to 2,200 calories. The most you can hope for is to lose around 1.25 pounds, maybe the very occasional 1.5 pounds. But for the most part, like, unless you're willing to starve yourself, you're not going to lose more than that. And trying to starve yourself to lose more isn't going to help you build anything sustainable or improve the balance of your diet. So we'll not talk about it this episode because I've probably done it in another episode about calorie capacity. But Megan, because Megan was 19 stone, she already has quite a high calorie burn just because of her body mass. So remember, for every pound of fat your body carries, that pound of fat requires 2 to 3 calories just to stay alive. So for every extra 100 pounds you're carrying, you're burning 200 or 300 extra calories a day. But it's not as simple as that because it costs energy to move 19 stone around. I'm about 11 and a half, 12 stone. If I put my son, my 10-year-old, on my back and walked around all day, I don't know what he weighs, but if I put him on my back, walked around all day, in fact, if I burn 2,300 calories today, and tomorrow I do everything that I've done today, take my son on my back for a dog walk, I sit at my desk with him on my back, I make the dinner, I do the washing up, like all that stuff, I would burn significantly more calories due to the additional weight. So it's the same, like when you're carrying a higher level of body weight, you have to take that everywhere you go. It's like lugging a couple of suitcases around everywhere you go. Everything you do is harder because you have to do it at whatever your weight is. And it's why you'll hear me say that life gets easier as you get lighter. But you will also burn fewer calories. You know, if Megan loses 5 stone, her calorie burn is going to drop dramatically because that's 5 stone that is no longer getting kept alive, first of all. So that's 2 to 3 calories per pound she's no longer burning, but also it's 5 stone that she's not carrying everywhere. So this is why your calorie burn goes up and down as you lose or gain weight. So anyway, Megan is 19 stone and she's burning very close to 3,000 calories a day. I set Megan's calories, like when somebody has a high calorie burn like that, I don't just set the normal range that I would. I knock an extra couple of hundred off because they have the calorie capacity to lose more. I think I set our calories around 2,000 to 2,200 as a range. Megan is regularly eating 1,200. 1,300, 1,100. Now, I know that's going to sound low, but let me explain. When most people I work with have dozens of habits that are adding weight to their body, right? It's never usually just one big thing. It's normally the person doesn't do food shops, they don't take lunches to work, they don't eat any fruit, they don't eat any vegetable, protein's not a part of their diet, they snack in front of the TV, they emotionally eat, they stress eat, they keep bags of sweets in the car, so they're eating sweets on every trip. Numerous, they snack when they're cooking dinner, they finish the kids' leftovers, they clear every plate, they eat very quickly. It's the reason that on day 2 we have a lesson inside the Monroe Method in the initial 30 days called food attachments, right? It's like, find out what all your food attachments are. Every time you put food in your mouth that isn't breakfast, lunch or dinner, what is it attached to? And it's to help people realise just how much they're eating, because a lot of people don't understand why their weight is where it is. And the thing is, the amount that you eat and how frequently you eat just feels normal to you because you do it every day. Like you generally don't live with someone close enough. Like even your partner, your partner goes to work. You don't see what they do at work. You don't see how often they eat. So generally, like, when you don't know how other people live and how other people do things, you don't think that you're doing anything differently. So it's really important to identify all of the places, all of the moments, all of the things, all of your food attachments that you put calories in your body. So the majority of people I work with have dozens of these habits. And the more of them they change, the easier they'll find it to get by on lower calories. And then most of your time is spent working on these things. You get to a check and it's like, this happened and I've not done my usual. I'm not picking at the kids' plate leftovers anymore. That chat you had with me about using myself as a food bin and blah, 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 wasted food, all that stuff helped. This terrible thing happened and I've not turned to food for comfort. So as we improve these things, you find it easier to get by on less. Your weight comes down, but it doesn't just come down because we're improving these things and they gradually become things you no longer do. You're turning into someone who can live at your lower weight. Right, back to Megan. The reason I said Megan is a 1 in 1,000 is because, and again, it's a little early to say this, but it feels like Megan's single biggest problem was that she used food to cope with her emotions. And it was literally like, I don't know this for sure, but if you think about where her weight is and the calories involved in reaching that weight, she was probably on a very regular basis, if not daily, coming home from work and just eating, like sitting in front of the couch and saying, right, what am I going to have now? Let's have that sharing bag of crisps. Let's have that whole bar of chocolate. Let's have that whole tub of Ben & Jerry's. I'm just making this stuff up, but that's what it would be like. Because if she's burning close to 3,000 calories a day, and to gain weight, you need to consume more calories than you burn, she's been used to eating 3,000 calories a day. Because if you think about it, once, she wasn't always 19 stone. She was once much lighter than that, and her calorie burn was much lower. So to get to where she is, she had to consume more than that. And that's why your body has to continue to increase in size. It increases in size, your calorie burn increases, and you eventually reach a point where your body has increased enough to match the amount of calories that you're putting in. It's why you'll find many people, if you've ever wondered, like, why do people not just keep gaining weight and never stop? Why do people, why is it that people don't just gain weight? If somebody's overweight, why do they not just keep gaining weight? Well, it's because they've gained weight, but their body's caught up with their eating habits and then it's leveled out. So like if Megan was regularly eating 3,000 and her body went up 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19 stone, leveled off at 19 stone, it would be because her body had become big enough for her to burn enough calories to now match how much she's putting in. So now at 19 stone, she's achieving weight maintenance because her body's caught up with her eating habits. So I feel like Megan is going to be one of these clients who doesn't have dozens of habits going on, doesn't have multiple things that she's doing. She has one dominating habit, and I think that's emotional eating. Because no, she's not done that for the last month, right? She's even had a tough time and she's not resorted to food. And I think it's because we've broken the cycle, because she started working with me, she's doing something new. It's exciting. It's a novelty. She's read, listened to podcast episodes, read posts, read testimonials, maybe spoken to a friend. And she feels very hopeful and excited that this could be different. And so she gives it her best effort. And during the first week, even though she wants to, she says, nope, I am not going to go and get that stuff. I'm not going to use food for comfort. And she doesn't do it, and she feels dramatically better. And her weight rockets down. And she goes, hang on a minute, this is going to work. I really don't want to emotionally eat anymore. So we've got into the next 2 weeks. She's had some things going on that would normally have led her to come home and, I think she said, order takeaways. Or reach for convenience, she said, which would have been ordering a takeaway, and she didn't do it. And as a result, She's lost 5.5 pounds over the last fortnight. And that makes sense to me because, like I said, she is burning close to 3,000 calories a day. She is getting by on almost 2,000 calories less than she needs. It's more like 1,500 less than she needs. And it's not because she's starving herself. It's not because she's trying to lose weight very quickly. It is quite literally her eating habits the rest of the time would have been absolutely fine. But she had this one dominating habit that was adding lots of calories in. And I did, I did my duty of care at her first check-in and says, look, your calories are super low. Like you used to consume 3,000 calories plus. And now in her first week, she was having 1,100, 1,200. And I'm like, this is very odd. For someone at 19 stone who has been clearly consuming 3,000, 4,000 calories regularly, how has she all of a sudden just managed to get by on a third of the amount? And it was a curiosity thing. It was a welfare thing, because initially it's like, okay, this person's starving themselves. This is not the Monroe way. Let's have a chat about it. But it's also a curiosity thing, because it's like, well, if you can do this, how can you do it? Like you're 19 stone. You've needed and had far more calories than this. What's the thing that's made you able to do this? Curiosity thing, but it's also if we know how you're doing this, then this is something we can use in the future. And I think it quite simply comes down to she's stopped emotionally eating. She's stopped reaching for convenience. And that single habit, like if you take away that single habit, her calories would drop dramatically. So when I talk about food attachments, and you've heard me talk about this before, they all add weight to your body, right? So your alcohol at the weekend could be responsible for a stone of the weight that you're carrying, because the bottles of wine have calories, the snacks you eat have calories, the takeaways you order have calories, and the hangover stuff that you do has calories, right? So your regular alcohol habits have you keeping 14 pounds on your body of alcohol-related weight. And then there's you might clear every plate of food. That might be responsible for 5 pounds of the weight that you're carrying. Eating 3 or 4 takeaways a week might be responsible for 10 pounds of the weight that you're carrying. So every habit that you have is responsible for a portion of your weight, because it's responsible for a portion of additional calories. So every time you address one of these habits, whether you cut the thing out entirely or just reduce it, you're scaling a little portion of calories down. But if you have one single dominating habit that's adding thousands of calories and you address it, my goodness. Quite often when I work with people, I kind of explain to them, like, when I find out more about them, more about what they're doing, I look at their diet, I see what their current balance of diet is like. I'll look for like a big bang for buck move that they can make that's going to help them feel dramatically different. Because if you can give someone that in week 1, then they'll buy into the process much more. So for example, like I work with, like the majority of people I work with, I'm going to say, and I know I talk about this a lot, they're consuming very high levels of fat in their diet. So I had a guy come join me recently. He was having, on his 2 days of tracking, he had like 120 grams of fat one day and 130 odd grams of fat the other day, right? 1,000, 1,100 calories in those days coming just from fat. And so I have the big chat with him, because that's one of the things that's responsible for people carrying higher levels of body weight, significantly higher levels. And it's one of those dominating things that if you can make a significant adjustment to that, that's going to change a lot for you. So he came back a week later, had his first check-in, and his average fat for his first week was down at 60 grams. So he had halved it in a week, reducing his calories by a massive amount, helping him get into and stay in a calorie deficit, seeing a significant drop in the first week. And he said, I've stopped snacking on cheese so much. So that's a very similar example where he had one dominating habit that was adding 500 or 600 calories a day extra into his diet. And it's not that we've cut cheese out, but it's one of those ones where, like, if you're having a cheese... I used to work with a guy. He wasn't overweight. He was actually quite lean and fit. But his daily sandwich was cheese and tomato. He used to get ripped for it. He had this glass bottle of juice. If you come from Scotland, we get these glass... I don't know if I've ever seen them in England. We get these glass bottles of juice. Are they a litre? I'm not sure. In the olden days, you used to get money for them, for taking them back to recycle them. So you would buy a glass bottle of Iron Brew. It would have the number 20p on the top. You would take that to your local shop, and you would get 20p of store credit, basically. And the shopkeeper would store all these empties and send them back to the factory, and they got reused. This guy has had one of these for decades, and he fills it up with diluting orange every day, and his sandwich every day, cheese and tomato. And it got to the point where people would always ask, what's on your piece today? Same thing every day. Anyway. If you're having cheese on your sandwiches every single day, like the guy I used to work with, but your snacks are also cheese, every time you go into the fridge, you're slicing off a couple of bits of cheese. When you're making your sandwich and grating the cheese, you eat a handful yourself. So by cutting down on his cheese, like not removing it, still having it because he enjoys it and he loves it, clearly, but having someone say to you, look, here's the thing that you're doing too much of. I need you to go and have a look at the fat in your diet and see where you can start to make reductions. This is not about swapping everything you're eating for low fat. That's not the point. You know, the solution to having a high fat diet is not to try to keep eating the same amount of fat, but just swap things to low fat. That's missing the point. The point is, here is a direction that you are leaning too heavily. To resolve this, you need to become someone who doesn't lean that heavily in that direction, which means learning which foods it is that you're eating that contain so much fat and reducing them. And in his case, he didn't need to halve them because he has quite a strong calorie burn. 60 to 80 grams a day would be quite a reasonable level for him. But 120, 130, that was quite high. And it was taking his total calorie intake quite high enough to see him gain weight. So that's one of those big bang for buck moves. And you know, it's funny because the biggest bang for buck moves are often the ones that we don't want to change. Because if we're doing so much of something, it's because we really enjoy it. You know, this would never fly, but if I would, you know, there are individual occasions where I have to have talks with people about alcohol. Because it's like, look, alcohol is completely fucking you up, like big time. I can't even begin to put it into words. I had someone recently join the group and they spoke about all their habits. Oh, I do this and I do that. I don't sleep very well. I've got a high stress job, blah, blah, blah. But I also drink alcohol 5 or 6 nights a week. Now, as soon as someone says that to me, when people talk about not getting much sleep, feeling tired, feeling exhausted, feeling stressed, and they then follow that up with, and I also drink multiple times per week. I don't know if we should save this for a full episode, but let's talk about it quickly. Alcohol increases stress. Alcohol steals sleep from you. Like when you sleep under the influence of alcohol, you're unconscious, but you're not going through a sleep cycle. You don't get, it's the reason that, you know, you can pass out at 8 o'clock after drinking a day session on a Saturday and wake up at 8 o'clock in the morning on a Sunday. 12 hours of sleep and you still feel exhausted. You still go for a nap in the afternoon. It's because you don't get real sleep when you're under the influence. So if your sleep is the problem, like drinking alcohol is like drinking coffee. You know, if you can't get to sleep at night and you drink a litre of coffee before bed, you would think that's fucking stupid. But if you drink a bottle of wine before bed, that's equally as stupid, because if exhaustion, tiredness, disrupted sleep, absence of sleep, if that's the problem, yeah, alcohol might send you off, but it's not sending you off to sleep. It's helping you get your eyes shut and pass time until the next morning. It's not helping you. It's not helping anything. You're not resting, you're not recovering, you're not going to be less tired the next day, you're going to feel worse the next day. So that's another example of a big bang for buck move. But the problem is, like I said, people don't want you to sit and tell them that they're drinking too much, that they're eating too much chocolate, that they're eating too many sweets, that they're snacking too much and they're going to have to start cooking. Like, the biggest problems are the things that we enjoy most. Okay, you're going to have to reduce your takeaways. You know, you can't be having takeaways 5 times a week and expect your weight to come down. You're going to have to make a change to that. So it's a bit of a delicate game where you don't like want to sit there and say, look, you need to change this thing because you're doing too much of it, because the reason they're doing too much of it is because they bloody love it. They're getting something from it. There is something so good about that habit that it makes them want to repeat it multiple times in a week at scale. So, back to the point. So cheese, that, back to Megan. Yeah, we'll wrap this up because I'm almost back at the road. So Megan, I feel, is one of those 1 in 1,000 clients who is going to come into the group and she is going to be losing a stone every other month. I've worked, like I said, 1 in 1,000. I have worked with maybe a dozen people like this who come in. We somehow find, you know, they're first of all, they're people who have that one single dominating, overwhelming habit, and they feel inspired and motivated, like this is the right time for me to change this thing, and she's changed it. Now, that isn't to say that it's not going to rear its head in the future. It isn't to say that she's never going to have takeaways again. But the way that she was using food before, every single night, sitting on the couch, I need to cope with this or deal with this or get stress release from this, she's not doing it. And even if she does start doing it again, even if she's drastically reduced it, she's still going to lose weight very quickly. So, like I said, the majority of people have dozens of little minor habits that are contributing to their overall weight. And that's why most people have quite a lot to work on. That's why most people yo-yo diet, because they don't want to work on these things. They just want you to say, look, just give me some numbers and I'll follow them till my weight comes down. And then I'll just cross my fingers and hope that it sticks. And then you have people like Megan, who maybe have 1, 2, 3 big habits that if you can change those big things, then my goodness, it's life-changing. So I will keep you updated on how Megan gets on, but I have a feeling that if she does, you know, if we can stay motivated, if she does continue to want to follow the process, then she is going to do incredibly well. And she's going to be one of those people who does like I say, when they come in, they're here and gone in an instant. I had someone stay for like 5 or 6 months, maybe 6 or 7 months, and she lost like 5 stone. Like, and it was like Megan, like £4 a fortnight, £5 a fortnight, £6 some fortnight. And it was because she found her dominating thing. Anyway, that is enough from me. Until next time.